And thanks for being with us. The Sri Lankan government has rejected claims by the Tamil Tiger rebels that they didn't assassinate the country's foreign minister. Lakshman Kadirgamar was shot at his home in the capital Colombo on Friday. He was a vocal critic of the Tigers and managed to get the group banned in several countries. The government has described the shooting as a serious setback for Sri Lanka's peace process. The BBC's Nick Bryant reports from Colombo.
This is the kind of security operation the people of Colombo hoped they'd seen the last of. After 2 decades of civil war, Sri Lanka has witnessed 3 years of fractious peace. But as the government declared a state of emergency and troops and police mounted a massive manhunt, its stalled talks process was plunged into deep crisis. Friday night's killing was aimed at the highest ranks of government and against its most heavily protected minister. Police believe 1 or 2 snipers carried out the assassination, targeting the foreign minister in his private residence and hitting him in the head and chest. A member of the Tamil minority himself, Lakshman Kadirgamar led Sri Lanka's diplomatic offensive to outlaw the Tamil Tigers around the world. That made him one of the rebels' main targets. As his body was returned to his official residence, the Tamil Tigers strongly denied any involvement in the killing. But security chiefs claim only the Tigers had the motive and the means to carry it out. This country is reeling still from the Asian tsunami. Now it's confronting a political crisis brought on in part by its response to that disaster.
It was hoped the tsunami could bring the two sides closer together, but it's driven them further apart. And an ongoing row about how to distribute aid seems to have spilled over into political violence.
This evening people responded well to the President's appeal for calm. Few expect a return to full-scale civil war, but the ceasefire agreement is under enormous pressure. Nick Bryant, BBC News, Colombo.
And with me now in the studio is Douglas Wickramaratne. He's president of the Sinhala Association here in the UK. Welcome to BBC News.
Thank you.
Do you think the peace process is in danger now then?
Yes, it is, because I think right the way through, there have been tremendous opposition to the peace process in the sense that people feel, the majority of the people in the south and even among the Tamils, they feel that the Tamils also have been abandoned to the LTTE because according to this particular agreement, the LTTE are supposed to be the sole representatives of the Tamils. Now, they have been, since the signing of that agreement, they have massacred about 350 Tamils who opposed them, and all the leading Tamil intellectuals have been wiped out by them. And so there is growing anger among the people that this agreement that was drafted by Norway is a completely one-sided agreement, and it is giving recognition to a terrorist organization where they have not been asked to surrender weapons, nothing of the sort. They're sole representatives of the Tamils, they're not surrendering weapons, but all the other armed groups that were against the LTTE have been disarmed, and they are at the mercy of the LTTE because they are the victims of all the killings.
But why would the Tamils do this at this stage? Because they have actually been getting close into these talks now, and then as we've heard in the report after the tsunami, with the money going up into the northeast area, it's not in their interest now, surely, is it?
Oh no, you see, right the way through, where they have been killing. Now people like, I know they have not claimed any responsibility, but over the years they have never claimed any responsibility for their killing. Now even when the ex-Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, was killed, they didn't accept responsibility, but finally they were charged, convicted, and in fact they are now, some of them have been sentenced to death in India, and there is an open warrant from the Indian government for the arrest of Prabhakaran.
So you really think the Tamils are behind this? It couldn't be any other grouping?
Oh no, you see, now we had the London suicide bombing, I mean tragic thing, on the 7th of July. But whereas on the 5th of July, Prabhakaran, the LTTE leader, was paying homage to 285 suicide bombers, or as he called them, suicide martyrs. Now, of those 285, that is one of the highest in the world, because they are the people who introduced suicide bombing to the world. And out of those 285 suicide bombers that have perished, there's no instance where they have acknowledged that those people carried out this bombing on behalf of the LTTE. It's only after years after the death anniversary that they're being paid homage. So we are quite used to these tricks of the LTTE.
Douglas Wickramaratne, many thanks indeed for coming in and your views.
Thank you very much.
Senior members of the Palestinian military.
Joining me now in the studio is Douglas Wickramaratne, President of the Sinhala Association here in the UK. Welcome to BBC News. What impact will this killing have on the peace process, such as it is?
Well, Mr. Lakshman Kadirgamar was a very popular politician, and I think it's a terrible blow for this so-called peace process, because Mr. Kadirgamar, mind you, has always insisted that there should be amendments to this peace process, because the ceasefire that was signed had created a lot of problems, because I mean, a lot of people think, well, there's no war there. But during the ceasefire period, LTTE has killed up to now, in the last 2 years, 350 people.
The LTTE, the Tamil Tiger rebel group.
Exactly. And they have, the monitoring committee itself has admitted there are over 3,000 violations. And the United Nations, these are not my figures, the United Nations have said that they have abducted children, 6,000 children. So there is no actual ceasefire in that sense.
Now, they are the main group that are negotiating with the government. How representative are they of the Tamil population?
Well, they've never been tested, you see, because they have never had any parliamentary election. The LTT rules by the gun. And there are other Tamil groups that are opposed to this. In fact, the ceasefire was a very, described by a Tamil United Liberation Front leader as a very foolish agreement, because it says LTT are the sole representatives of the Tamils, and also that there is no talk about surrendering of weapons. And Lakshman Kadirgamar recently in London, to a question that I raised in a public meeting, he said, well, no country can have two armies or two navies, and the LTT must surrender weapons if they are to go ahead with any kind of a permanent solution to the problem.
Why has tension risen, particularly since the tsunami?
It's not quite since the tsunami. It had been going on, as I say, for the last 2 years. 350 people have been killed, and some of the about 50 intelligence officers have been killed, and the government has downplayed it. In fact, some of the human rights organizations themselves have said the government and the opposition have not made any, told the world about the children being abducted. It was up to United Nations to come out with this thing, and people like the American Human Rights Organization, Human Rights Watch, who came out saying that these children are being abducted, but the government doesn't want to. They think that because of the Norwegian pressure, Norway who drafted the agreement, because of the Norwegian pressure, they think that government should not highlight these things, you see, and it's a question of appeasement of the LTTE.
Okay, Douglas Wickramaratne, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Sniper fire. Police have blamed Tamil Tiger rebels for the killing, but the groups denied any involvement. A government spokesperson rejected the denial and said the murder's a grave setback to the nation's peace process.
We totally condemn that killing, and we are very much shocked. And of course, our determination to go ahead with the peace process is not deterred by this brutal effort.
Well, to tell us more, we're joined now by Douglas Wickramaratne, who's a political analyst and the president of the Sinhala Association of Sri Lankans in London. Thank you for coming in and talking to us this afternoon here on Sky News. First of all, President Kumaratunga has said he was killed by political foes, yet we've heard the Tamil Tigers have denied it this afternoon. What's your take on it?
No, this is the usual tactics of the LTT or the Tamil Tigers to deny any political killings. But we know in the last 2 years alone, since the ceasefire was signed, there have been 350 killings of mainly Tamils. In fact, when the LTT, the Tamil Tigers, killed Rajiv Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India, they denied responsibility. But then they were found guilty, and about 6 of them were sentenced to death. And they have issued a warrant for the open arrest of Prabhakaran, their leader. So this is the usual. We are quite used to the LTT tactics of denying. But we all know in Colombo and even in the north, Jaffna, the killings is done. In fact, recently, the leader of the Tamil United Liberation Front was in London, and he was saying that he's not free to go to the north even. He can move around anywhere in the south, but he's not free to go to the north because he would be killed by the LTTE. And the same way Mr. Lakshman Kadirgamar, whom I knew very well, in fact he was here on the 17th and 18th of March, where 18th of March his portrait was unveiled at the Oxford University. And he was an intellectual giant, and in the South Asian region he was a highly respected politician. And he, in fact, when I put a question to him on the 17th of March at a meeting he held, he accepted that he was a target of the LTTE and that he has to be very careful in moving around.
Why was that? Because he campaigned against them?
He campaigned. In fact, he had, by the way, I mean, he's a Tamil himself, and he was one of the people who said we want a united Sri Lanka and that the Tamils should be liberated from the LTTE. And one of the things that is happening is since he, I mean, it was his campaign that enabled Britain to, or the UK to ban LTTE as a terrorist organization. But what has happened is since the ban is there, but the LTTE seems to be free to collect funds here, and they are collecting funds in a big way every year. Now, in fact, in November there's a meeting that is scheduled here. Last year, the November meeting collected £1 million for LTTE funds, you see. We have been appealing to the British government as well that they must, it's not enough just declaring the LTTE as a terrorist organization. They must take action to prevent the fundraising, you see. Because, you see, we now, for the first time in London, we have seen the tragedy of suicide bombing. I mean, we have suffered suicide bombing in Sri Lanka for a number of years because LTTE were the pioneers of suicide bombing. In fact, the irony of it is on the 5th of July, Prabhakaran, their leader, was paying homage to 285 suicide bombers that had died on there. But the thing is, the masterminds of the LTTE, of the suicide killing, are living in London. And we have repeatedly asked the British authorities that it's no point just being concerned only about Muslim terrorists, but there are other suicide terrorists who have been responsible for action outside.
Briefly, a state of emergency has been introduced now. What's this going to mean for that fragile ceasefire?
I think the emergency, of course, is set up mainly to prevent any kind of a backlash from the people for the killing, because Mr. Lakshman Kadirgamar was a very popular minister, and he had travelled the world over, and he's well known to all the political leaders, you see. And but the peace process, of course, was engineered by Norway, and it has been, people have rejected that because the ceasefire had been violated by the LTTE over 3,000 times in the last 2 years, you see.
Well, Mr. Wickramaratne, I'm afraid they must leave it, but thank you for coming and giving us your views this afternoon here on Sky News.
Thank you.